I have exactly 0 viewers right now. Tremendous. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. This is Broken Gears Airsoft. It's our 11th broadcast. The number 1 is in brackets on account of our plan from basically the get-go to have this be likely, if it comes to that, the first going up on like a proper podcast feed. Just some context for folks as Matt, run things on like the audiovisual administrative end. A lot of the services that I've looked up so far, I'm sure there are alternatives on some level, have some interesting throttles insofar as only being able to upload a certain amount of content properly onto like a podcast feed in terms of like hours per month. So we're kind of potentially in a jam here in terms of being able to get everything up and going at once, having done 30 plus hours of presently public content. So that's just kind of a challenge we're in the middle of doing. Hence why I figured, all right, why don't we just, while we get the backlog uploaded, if we even do, because it's all on the YouTube channel right now, just sort of reintroduce ourselves and do another episode where, again, if we absolutely have to settle for this, if you will, have this be like our functional, I can't believe it's not a pilot episode. So yeah, that's really the long and short of my involvement in the podcast here. So Mike, Tom, you want to introduce yourselves, talk about a little bit what we've been up to in the past, she'll be 3 years this July, technically. We've made it a whole 10 shows. Yeah, want to take it away and say a few words there?
Go ahead. Oh, okay.
Mike,
see, Matt,
go.
You already fucked it up. All right, I'll go.
Won't be the last time tonight.
I'm Tom Liptak. I've been airsofting for way too long, like just shy of 20 years at this point. My day job is an engineer, so that sort of dictates how I contribute to a lot of this stuff. And yeah, member of
part of big reason
Enterprises. We have another YouTube channel, and yeah, make some fun content there too.
Please check it out.
I'm Mike Haggerty. I've been involved in airsoft since 20 something years now. I brought a lot of different big names out this way for us to play at locally. I've run a bunch of fields, had a couple stores, was a game designer for many, many years, and helped build up Western New York, hopefully, into a decent airsoft community. I currently am on a self-imposed hiatus from doing this stuff because I don't have the patience, the time, or the energy. So instead, we do a podcast and kind of have a good time with it. So if we offend you, cheers.
Absolutely. Yeah, so actually segueing back into that, I'm Matt. I've been involved with Airsoft, at the backyard level, close to 20 years myself. But that was, again, the proverbial clear plastic Dick's guns. That's where they used to be sold. In my backyard, in my front yard, of course.
In your backyard with your dick gun.
As one does.
I walked right. I'm not going to step right on that.
Man, I'm sorry.
That was an anti-tank mine I stepped on. I'll own it.
All right. Continue.
So yeah, that was probably 06 to 08. Middle school, just fucking around in the backyard and the front yard, and really anywhere else it didn't become a problem. Got my first proper AEGs, one of which I still have and still chugs right along, an old school combat machine. Not that I've heard the new Raiders are significant drop QC wise. So I don't know how comparable it really is to anything out there at this point. Yeah, so at that point, beyond just backyard games with some friends, some relatives, some of which still dipping out of the hobby today, I kind of stepped out for a list of reasons. None particularly personal, but mostly boring. And fast forward, except for one skirm in 2012 to 2016 or thereabouts, when I got a little more involved with the current local scene here in Western New York, as more or less as it's known now. There have been some changes in the past 8-ish years, but it was around about that time I got involved with the former Red Brook Airsoft, where we all helped run things and all kinds of really interesting ops with operations, which obviously most folks ever seeing this will realistically already know means a more larger, structured, organized event in airsoft, as opposed to your skirmishes or your open plays, which is just everyone bring your AEG and your Jewel and shoot for 4 or 5 hours Saturday and leave. So yeah, we've actually talked in the past broadcasts about a lot of really interesting aspects of the hobby. I don't feel like people are discussing as much, whether it's the role playing what forms that can take insofar as, we're not throwing blue hacky sacks at each other and yelling lightning bolt where, it's forming squads that have 5 different shittily impressed fake accents and, fighting over as part of a fictional faction in a fictional conflict in a fictional country. We've entirely devised alongside a lot of other friends of ours who are, creatives and amateur historians and innumerable other things of some relevance. And so I realized that there was, a venue for things like that, which were definitely more my speed than other options as far as, places to play and, and experiences to have. And obviously things have waxed and waned in certain respects since, but by and large, that takes us to present day, where while I don't myself, quite get out as much as I used to, again for a lot of fairly boring reasons. We decided this is probably July of 2021. We first started this, but the reason we're still at it largely remains the same: is to sort of kind of hang out and discuss various aspects of the hobby that we enjoy discussing and enjoy otherwise talking about. And we started life more so as like a tech Q&A show. We still obviously do that and welcome that content and such inquiries in the chat during our live broadcasts. Not as relevant if you're listening to this in future. Decided, okay, that's would be a premise a little more conducive to a little more numbers. So what kind of content do we fill that chasm of a gap with? And we've since then started talking about, as I said, all different aspects of the hobby and our experiences therein, and some other goofy stuff along the way as well, including our April Fool's special a couple of years ago, and our one last week as well, which we are in the middle of re-uploading on account of some technical editing issues. Not a big deal there. And one of those former such episodes where we talk about some aspect of the hobby includes tonight's episode, and we are talking about optics. Optics being defined as one of 2 arguably useless accessories strapped to your gun, usually the top, but you can put it on other sides if you're a bit creative. Let's get right into that, guys. I don't know if this will be a particularly polemical opinion among our high council tonight, but this past harangue notwithstanding, I feel like if this were a bigger channel or a content creator in some other space, or God forbid a tech support help or some other kind of related news, nerd gaming news article, innumerable other things, we would perhaps begin with an entire history of not only ourselves but of airsoft and of optical accessories for firearms, replica or otherwise, and to tell our thoughts on every possible philosophical issue, and maybe at some point after that we would actually discuss what role these play on an airsoft gun and in airsoft largely. But I am just going to say right here, right now, this is whatever kind of money, because they exist at all price points, but whatever amount of money you've set aside for whatever reason have committed to possibly purchasing or otherwise acquiring some optics outside of shit you just might get for free, I'm going to come out and say that by and large, especially if you're on the newer side, that's kind of low key what our podcast is, who our show is oriented towards. Don't. They are, a while back, we kind of abstractly discussed sort of tiers of purchases in terms of what a newer player or even a player with a little experience should be buying first. Things like how proper rated, safe, full seal PPE, namely eye protection, and quality boots, even a little gear and a couple uniforms or a couple otherwise other airsoft related attire is arguably a higher priority purchase than your first gun, even though everyone wants to start by talking about their first gun. I would say optics are probably 2, 3, 4 tiers below even a gun. So what do you guys think from there? Do you find, because my whole thing is essentially that maybe outside of a couple specific play styles, namely snipers, namely a very particular kind of sniping, and we've talked at length, I believe, in our tactics episode a ways back about how sniping is it's not the Call of Duty class of airsoft. It's more of a distinct play style. You could arguably do it with pretty much anything but a shitty pistol, or even those. And so maybe outside of a few of those guys, most optics aren't doing much for you. I guess that's kind of my thesis.
Well,
here.
so
What do you guys think there?
yeah, so I mean, I got some thoughts there. I definitely agree that from a new player perspective, it's definitely not something that you really need to strongly prioritize. I would say that it's something that you would want to avoid. If you're going to do it, get something that's half decent. Would be my thought on the matter. I think the trap would be like you're browsing, eVic or name your favorite airsoft retailer, and you're getting into your first gun or whatever, and you're sort of pricing out what you want. You see the like cheapo $30-$40 red dots, and you think, oh yeah, no, that'll help, and this will improve my game or improve my gun or whatever. And
Or
frankly,
your
your FPS, frankly, stuff that's at that price point is going to be fairly worthless garbage for the most part. I do think that if you have a previous familiarity with firearms, you can definitely get a lot out of a red dot or something like that. I'm sort of focusing more on that. As you mentioned, there are definitely some niche uses. Zoom optics, for people that are sniping or doing designated marksman stuff, those do have a use. I wouldn't say that there's too much use to putting those on a normal gun unless you're using them for spotting targets at a distance, trying to do like target acquisition and spotting, just making sure that you're getting, if you're seeing friendlies, if you're seeing enemies, yada yada, that kind of thing. Identification of targets, that can definitely be useful. On your average AG, zoom optics are probably less useful for especially like high power ones that go beyond maybe like 2x are not as useful for your normal AEG, but would definitely be more useful on something like a DMR. Thinking more back towards red dots, I mean, objectively, and even though technically in airsoft, like every BB that you have is a tracer BB, a red dot definitely does increase your ability to get on target and get a shot on target accurately much faster than using even pretty nice iron sights, I would say. That's just a fact, essentially. I mean, you can demonstrate that again with real firearms, and that does translate over to airsoft. If that's, of course, assuming that you know how to properly sight your thing in, and that your gun is accurate enough to actually make use of that. Again, I will preface or I guess I will amend that it is not a priority thing, but it can definitely be something that you keep on your list of stuff to buy, as long as it's a half decent optic and not a complete piece of junk.
I think that one of the things that I would probably add to that is, as somebody who has bad eyesight in one eye.
Oh, yes. Really, I was going to get into that, actually. Yeah, really good point.
Yeah, no problem. As somebody who has one bad eye, and those of you who know me, I have a lazy eye, and I have 20/20 in one and about 20/40 in the other. I usually ran like a 3 to 5x minor magnification optic on most of my rifles over the years, because I found that it gave me a little bit more of an edge when I'm looking and scanning for people, like you said, Matt. I think that's definitely something worth mentioning. And then furthermore, of course, I never used red dots because my eyesight was kind of crappy, and so they didn't really work for me. But I definitely can tell you, as somebody who did a lot of sniping over the years, that having a decent magnifying lens, even like a Tasco, like a BB gun style, jacked up BB gun style, really helped me with being able to find what I was aiming at a lot smoother than just iron sights. That said, I still like iron sights, but just in general, I mean, I can definitely see the need for different types of optics based on what person needs or what their role they're playing in the game.
Great way to figure out if you have an astigmatism or not is to pop up a red dot. I have known that I've had an astigmatism. I know several people that do also have astigmatisms. Some people that did not know that they had one until they went and used a red dot the first time. And they're like, wow, these all look like complete dog shit. And then realized, wait a minute. I haven't seen an eye doctor in 7 years, and then realized that they actually do in fact have an astigmatism, which can kind of preclude you from using some cheaper red dots. And does sort of force you to use things like actual hollow sights, for example, like an EOTech or whatever.
Right. No, that's interesting. Obviously, with situations quite that unique, obviously there's going to be some level of caveat. I'll take ownership of that now. So yeah, I guess Tom, if you could rev up our screen sharing apparatus and open the Google Drive folder, I guess we can just discuss a little bit more about what some of the pieces I photographed here and what points we can make off of that. Why don't we fire up photo 3? So that's the everything in a column rather than a row. Let me know when we're good.
Oh, yeah, good to go.
Got it.
Want to let me share.
All right, so there's Tom on the screen share. Appreciate that. So yeah, I guess this is yeah, same one. You're good.
Apologies.
So yes, this is just a fun spread of I mean the aspect ratio isn't ideal for what we're doing, but the points being made. So this is a typical spread of, in my view, a fairly accurate representation of the different types of scopes and other optics out there. If anyone truly is new enough to the point of certain e-bike listing photos or wherever else you're getting your goods don't accurately show too much by way of scale. A couple of those, as you can see, are on M4 carrying handle mounts or other rail risers. That's obviously something I do with a lot of my optics. I use either or both of those, depending on how many guns I'm bringing, just to more easily use whatever optics with my ESS goggles, which are the Asian fit low profile ones. That's what they're called. And, just to get a little better, not cheek weld per se, but be able to see down the goddamn things properly. So, Tom, photo 1, actually, I believe is a better look at the longest one. If you want to just minimize that, because I can see your screen here. Photo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, photo 6. I'm sorry, things got jumbled, or I probably just didn't remember. Yeah.
Yep.
Photo 6 and photo 8 are that one. So that's a better picture of the longest one. I guess we can go over just a little bit of how to read this. So if I recall correctly, that indicates that can be adjusted between 3 and 9 times magnification.
Correct.
And 40R, I believe, is the ID of the front lens.
Yes,
40 millimeter, and
you were correct there. Yep.
And what's the R reflection?
Not actually sure on that one, to tell you the truth. Yeah, that's the objective. Is the 40.
Okay. So that will make things between 3 and 9 times larger. Obviously, it's up to 9 power zoom. That is obviously something you would use for, as Tom discussed, proper sniping, designated marksman stuff. I had, I don't know if I had a photo, if you want to minimize this quick, Tom, of the other larger scope. That's my personal one. Maybe photo 4 shows it somewhere. I might not have taken one. Nah, minimize photo 7, please. Second to last from the right. So dead center is my main one. I don't know if we can zoom in at all or make out what that shows power wise. It's literally 3 feet from me, but my mic cord is just short enough that I can't.
Those are I mean those types of adjustable optics. Typically for airsoft ones, they're usually 3 through 9.
By like 20 or 30, depending.
Yeah, that guy there looks like a 30.
Yep. 4x32 actually, just a red green mill dot. Okay. But an extraordinary amount of magnification, and definitely something I've used multiple times, just on my aforementioned ancient combat machine for DMR hood shit and spotting targets. And these are one of the rarer cases of optics sort of pulling their weight, especially in our at Red Brook, which was a principally wooded, pretty heavily wooded field. So there were situations where 80, 90 feet out, 200 feet out, okay, I'm not sure if that was the wind or somebody moving around over there, and it was definitely nice to have at that point. Just like a lot of video games, once things got a little more close quarters, it wasn't quite as easy to aim down sights properly. But at that point, you can hip fire or turn the gun at a 45 or look down. Sometimes actually that riser is largely hollow, so I was able to just look straight down that.
Yeah, that's actually deliberate.
Improvised irons.
Those types of risers are allowing you to use your iron sights. It's just like a backup.
Right.
It's kind of nice to have that, or have the angled sights on the sides.
Yep, that is also a thing. 45-degree sights, or even actually 45-degree rail mounts for like a smaller backup red dot. Stuff like that are.
Oh yeah. Okay. But yeah, extraordinarily useful optics. I actually just acquired a lot of this stuff, some of which from Tom. So the other larger ones I haven't messed around with much. The octagonal one is cool. Tom, I can't remember. I believe we have a photo more focused on that. I believe it's the NC Star that would show the magnification on that as well. Yeah, photo 5. Awesome, thanks. So that's so remind me how to read this. Is it just specifically 1.1 power
to 4 power? Yep,
to 4 power. Okay, just an odd. You would think it would just be 1 to 4. Maybe it's has something to do with the lens shape or something or other. I digress.
I really like the octagonal look on that scope.
Yeah,
it's a cool look.
A lot of these optics, and that's actually
around,
kind of an interesting point. Like a lot of these optics, like I see, there's you have a clone of a
yeah, Tom. As a lot of this stuff was your old stuff. Let's
like this guy, for example. I mean, there's a lot of cases where if you're picking up an optic, it's specifically for like an impression or something like that. Again, like aim points, certain things that are like real steel optics. There's definitely a half decent reason for buying the cheapo like $30 scope, specifically like using it in photos, things like that, or again as like an impression piece.
Or a starter. I mean, if
yeah,
you
or
have
a starter.
a lot of money and you want to dabble in it,
That's fair enough. Right. I mean, honestly, my take there would be if you're, I would save that $30 and just, I mean, my thinking being here, and I do have some examples you can see up in my top tabs there. There's a lot of very like real optics companies that make good scopes. Guys like Vortex, Holosun, 6 Hour. Those companies sell red dots, budget red dots for real firearms that are between $100 and $150. Is that a lot if you're just getting into airsoft and you're maybe a bit younger, you may not have the same access to funds? Yes, that is definitely a lot of money. I would say that you're probably going to hate yourself if you buy a cheapo $30 optic that has absolutely terrible coatings, looks like you're looking through a blue tint when you look into it, doesn't have anti-glare coating on it, has absolutely terrible parallax when you're trying to aim at it from a different angle. It probably is worth your time to save up a little bit more money and buy something that's half decent that will last you a lifetime and that will be warranted for starters, and will actually give you half decent performance.
Oh, great point on the warranty as well. But just from a general QC standpoint, also, I mean, I know you guys are among my litany of friends that constantly have to hear about my automotive woes. But just for the sake of a car analogy, which I know a lot of people like, I mean, we appreciate not being able to cruise into Lexus and not have very much be in the budget. But I mean, just don't sink fully to the point of the 97 Silverado on Marketplace for $3,600 that the guy posted with a clean title, because he's fucking lying. Much the same, the $30 scope beyond should not very much should be expected of it beyond looking fun in pictures.
I would tend to agree with that. Yeah. I mean, if you want a functional optic, something like again, a Vortex Crossfire or a Romeo 5 or a Holosun 403B, those are all, relatively speaking, I mean, compared to how expensive airsoft is to get into these days, I mean, that's not a ton of money. And as we've noted at the very beginning, this is absolutely not something that you need to buy right off the bat. But those are all budget scopes that will work on literally any of your guns and that will perform very admirably on all of them, and real guns if you happen to own those too.
100%. Yeah, that's actually extraordinarily cheap for a real firearm accessory or a real firearm.
No, and these are optics that you can 100% get use out of.
Yeah, and obviously, if you're at a point where you've done your own research, which I hope significantly extends beyond the breadth of our show tonight, and decide that this might be something of a modicum of utility in the context of your loadout and play style, and right at that point, maybe it's worth, I said, investing in something a little more serious. What else is noteworthy of our photos here, Tom? That's definitely our fun placeholder one.
Well, I mean,
how about lens protection? Obviously, only about half of these
very important.
have any sort of protection. Dead center is obviously my oldest piece of this lineup. The scope we discussed further or before. That one I managed to find. I think I had to shim it up with a little double-sided tape or something, but I did find a protector on Evike years ago. It's since completely busted off, and that's fine. But yeah, what are our options as far as protection goes for anything once we get to the price point of giving a shit?
The standard, I think, right now is still Lexan, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah, so you have a couple different options. For some reason, people seem to be like, if you buy a lot of them, like on Amazon or e-Vike, a lot of them are acrylic for some reason that makes absolutely no sense to me. I mean, those are essentially sacrificial. They just shatter when they're hit by a BB, which will protect your scope. But I mean, then you got to go and get another one. I mean, Mike hit the nail on the head. You should be using something like polycarbonate or Lexan. These are pretty trivial to make yourself if you really want to. They do also sell them. You can just buy, or you can just buy a little piece of sheet and just like tape it to the front of your gun, or tape it to the front of your scope. That it is completely reasonable and works just fine. You can get a little bit crazier than that and make an appropriately sized one that will fit into your actual scopes, like sun protector, or will fit into the little window on the front of your red dot. All very good things. Strongly recommend that for protecting your investment.
As far as actually performing that cutting operation, this is obviously material not nearly hard enough that you would have to worry about being able to cut it with like just a cheap bandsaw for wood.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah,
and I mean, you know what? Not everybody has access to that stuff. There are plenty of sellers on Etsy and things like that that will sell you custom shaped ones.
Right, whether it's
pretty
for this particular scope, or if they offer custom services, get them like an OD measurement.
Yep.
Numerous things. Yeah, I know a lot of folks have started doing that. Actually, shouts out to our newest indoor field, Bad Cat Airsoft, over in Rochester. Had a great time when we went for opening weekend. They have, I believe, fairly recently started. I don't know if they have like a laser cutter or similar in back or at somebody's place involved on the staff, but they are starting to offer custom lens protection options of various flavors as per one of their more recent social media posts. Feel free to reach out if relevant to them about that. So that's an option as well, an extraordinarily affordable one. Is that if you have a have a measurement or know exactly what you've got, trademark, copyright. There is still stuff like the protectors on the second from the right, shown in the photo up now, and the one next to that, that just kind of sleeve over. They're usually like a rubber. I think e-Vike, Airsoft, GI will all still stock at least some of that stuff.
Ones.
Yep. Yeah. As I said earlier, great way to shim up alongside many other things. Stuff like that, if it's not quite fitting right, is some double-sided Scotch tape, any electrical tape. That's because that comes back off without leaving too much by way of goop. Stay away from duct tape, Gorilla Tape, shit like that, and you can get that fitting nice and also not actually and not look too trashy if that's of relevance. So yeah, there's protection in a nutshell. It's definitely not a serious problem to track down a solution that'll work at this point. Obviously, like so many other aspects of the hobby, 15 years ago might have been another conversation. Yeah, and obviously it doesn't break the bank too much either. So even conceivably a $40, $50, $60 scope for the extraordinarily slim chance, in my experience, that you're going to get that shot out in any reasonable span of time, is definitely worth looking into. Yeah. What do we want to talk about next, optics wise? We got a little more time to fill here.
I can definitely say that having the polycarbonate's a really good idea as a lens protector. I've used scopes on pretty much everything that I've ever used because my eyesight's so terrible. That said, literally, I've had probably 3 or 4 of them completely just blown right out on me, the outer lens in the end. I had a guy clip me with I don't remember what the hell he was shooting with. He was a VSR 10 or something, and he had me dead to rights, not a problem, but he got me right in the optics, and I was just so shocked. I called myself out instantly. I was like, "Oh God, you blew my optics out. I'm dead. I'm good with that." So I went to respawn, and then realized how bad it really was, and that was the first time that I'd gotten it shot out. And then I bought a polycarbonate lens protector for it. Had the lens replaced. I think I had it for about another 2 months, and then somebody shot the polycarbonate out earlier in the day, and then shot the lens out later in the day. And I was just like, okay, I can't win. So then I swapped to a regular, like a non-airsoft scope, like a real steel one.
Sure.
And once I had that, it was, I was committed to having, polycarbonate lenses. So I bought one of those ones you can just replace the lenses really quick with a couple of Allen keys. And I've been using that ever since for all the scopes that I've got because I can't. I just can't. I don't.
Yeah, you spend any decent amount of money on these, it's worth getting a $6 piece of polycarb to protect it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I mean, especially a zoom optic. Like, you get that shot out, you can get the lenses replaced, but I mean, or buy a new lens and try to do it yourself. But I mean, there are oftentimes those things are nitrogen purged. So scopes have like a vacuum on the inside so they don't fog. And then as soon as you penetrate that, it's just going to be a fogging nightmare. And your investment's kind of down the tube. So that sucks. And I would not recommend doing that.
I mean, if you're just going to throw money away, I mean, there's far better things you could throw money away at.
Can't argue with that.
You know,
not a lot of them involve airsoft, but some,
yeah, most of them don't. But yeah,
actually, just for a goof, I punched in scope lens protector on Amazon. I'm amazed how many different options there are. Whether it's the just sort of windows, more so meant for going in front of your optics.
Yeah, those are quite popular.
$9 apparently with the mount if you got the rail space for it.
Something
and
like
most setups probably will, because you're really principally worried in this, protection wise with this bullshit, from the direct hits situations. I don't know many folks who have ever gotten like the rear lens shot out or had a weird ricochet get all the way up to the point of screwing up a lens up front. So I mean, yeah, you could conceivably have a good little chunk of peace of mind for, I'm seeing $9, $11, $12, $13. It's really
absolutely
not.
Bearing in mind, you do want to make sure that whatever you're buying is not acrylic. A lot of these will be acrylic just because that's cheaper. Just make sure at least it's stating that it's polycarb. Whether or not you actually get polycarb, who knows? But that is what you'd want to look for. Or Lexan, it would be known as Lexan or polycarbonate.
Yeah.
I was about to ask you earlier, more or less the same material for our purposes.
Literally the same. Yeah. Lexan is the trade name for polycarbonate.
For polycarbonate. Yes. Okay. I was just about to say, just about to ask if that was the case, rather. So I guess we haven't talked a whole lot about specific play styles that specific types of optics are more and less conducive to. I mean, without saying snipers per se, because I said we've discussed that that's not really what a lot of people think it is in the context of airsoft tactics and gameplay. We'll just say longer range engagements, whatever your firearm of choice. Obviously, it plays its role there, whether it's for target identification and magnification, target spotting, target calling out. You're not necessarily using these as a tool of direct engagement all of the time.
To be 100% honest, also not worth discounting the visual. I mean, like, while in airsoft, like, conceivably, like, if you had like a 1 MOA red dot or something like that, like, none of the stuff that we're doing is really at a range where, like, you seriously need 9x magnification. But, like,
oh god,
I don't know. I mean, to me, like, I look at a sniper rifle, I expect it to have a relatively decent sized scope on it, or like something that looks like it'd be magnified. I mean, like, there is definitely something to be said for the visual aspect of having
the importance of the fashion show cannot be understated.
Appropriate
Absolutely.
Piece of glass on it. Yeah.
No, I'm with you there. I guess, are there any real cases where other stuff like your red dots or aim points would disproportionately pull their weight in closer range engagements? Or at that point, is it an 80-20 rule where you're mostly getting the deed done most of the time with some good irons or no sights at all?
I would. So I mean, me now personally, and this is not tooting my own horn or anything like that, I do in CQB oftentimes just go with iron sights. Frankly, in CQB, a lot of the time I get used to my guns enough that I generally point shoot. That takes a lot of time and a lot of familiarity with your weapon to know exactly where the BBs are going to go, where you're pointing it. And also, objectively, not as accurate as actually utilizing your sights. I would say that people, like a lot of speed softers, a lot of normal airsofters, just utilize point shooting at closer ranges because, again, you can sort of see where your BBs are going. Getting first shot kills on like small things like elbows, bits of people sticking out, that's very, very, very challenging to train yourself to do just by point shooting. And you learning to use a red dot appropriately, both eyes open, not, focusing exclusively on your little sight picture, making sure you can maintain situational awareness. That will improve your performance in a lot of CQB situations.
Yeah, it's a fair assessment. I agree with that.
And again, this is borne out with real steel stuff too. I mean, you definitely get better performance out of your gun and your own shooting with a red dot versus just using irons.
No, it's a great point.
Provided that you actually have, I think like parallax is a pretty important thing, especially in CQB. I got a little, just a brief explanation there. So I mean, like people sort of forget about this with cheaper red dots. You could have a situation like you have down here in the bottom right, where if you hold the red dot up to your face and kind of shift it left and right, the deviation on the dot, if the focal plane of the dot is beyond your target, and you're shifting it left and right, you will actually have a deviation in terms of where your shot's going to land versus where the dot physically is. The situation with a decent scope, like you see on the left here, you will have far fewer issues with parallax. And even if your eye isn't directly lined up with the scope, the dot will remain in line with the bore of your weapon, which it would not do on something that has parallax issues. And that is much more important in CQB than it is with longer range shooting too, obviously.
No, it was actually a really cool explanation of that, and I never really thought to think about it that way and associate it with those terms. Obviously, just back to realizing when you're strafing and shit in Call of Duty, you do see that at play. And so far as the dot obviously is following the bore of the weapon.
And a lot of those games just correct for parallax because they can just do that by programming it. But with real, actual, physical glass optics, you do have to do a little bit more legwork in terms of designing your optic to actually be able to deal with parallax.
Very cool.
And you can get even crazier than that by talking about like focal planes, because you can see that the dot is actually beyond the focal plane of the target here, but here it's in line with the focal plane, first focal plane, second focal plane optics. There's a whole heap of, frankly, insane engineering aspects to rifle scopes and things like that, that if you're really interested in that stuff and you want to really up your game, you certainly can. But for the purposes of Airsoft is probably a little bit beyond the scope of what you really need. No pun intended.
Right. Or was a pun intended? I mean, we're close.
Yeah, well, actually, you know what? Screw it. I'll take that pun.
Sure.
Run with it.
All right. I mean, we are, as I said, approaching the end of our planned segment on optics more generally. Is any closing remarks on anything else at this point, whether we've discussed it at length much or not? I really feel like we've covered most of what there is to talk about here, in the context of a 1 hour-ish show.
Yeah.
Anything left?
I think that covers the basics. I mean, I think, again, depending on how your personal eyesight is, really would dictate, what your needs may or may not be. And then furthermore, keeping in mind the basic precepts of protecting the investment that you put into it, is definitely an important thing. So,
just in terms, I completely agree with you on that one, Mike. Just one more thing to add there in terms of personal, like what you're using for just based on your other gear and or eyesight issues that you have. Again, think about astigmatisms. If you have one, you're going to have issues with cheaper red dots. You might need something like a hollow sight or something like that to sort of help with that. Another thing to think about, and this kind of goes back to what something Matt brought up earlier on. If you're also depends extremely on what kind of goggles you use. So certain scopes are going to have different eye reliefs. Eye relief is how far away your scope, how far away your eye is from the actual scope to form a proper sight picture. If you have a scope on hand, you can just kind of look at it by moving your head towards and away from it. You can see that like the picture will get really, really tiny, really, really big, and then it will perfectly fill up the scope. That point where it perfectly fills it up is the appropriate eye relief for that scope. If you have a scope that has too short of an eye relief, sometimes your goggles will bump up against it before you get a really good sight picture. That can be an issue with a lot of Russian scopes. They have very close eye relief. That is something you definitely want to consider. And oftentimes that's a statistic that is listed for that particular scope. Also an important part of what gun you're mounting it to, because if the scope rail is further up the gun, that may dictate how you deal with the whole issue of eye relief. Or if your gun has a very long stock or length of pull, that will definitely impact what kind of optic you can actually mount on the gun.
A gun without a collapsible stock potentially could become awkward if
like think about like an FAL or something like a very long length of pull. That
full stock M16 with some stock M16 with some weird scope with with the eye relief that isn't quite right. Obviously, you
110%. That's why you see those M16 carry handle scopes that are very specifically meant to have the right eye relief for an M16 length full stock.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess we could say that nothing bad comes of, starting with looking at what kind of gun you're putting your optics on when you start shopping for them. Maybe even starting the search at what kind of real steel optics are conducive to that real steel equivalent firearm, and then sort of retroactively seeing if anyone makes something of remote quality at lower price points, marketed to airsofters or otherwise, that is essentially a replica of that scope or optics. So there's that. Definitely, obviously, be mindful of, don't just, even for potentially a really good deal, and we'll get to that. I have a search query of scope ready for us on Hop Up to screen share momentarily.
Okay.
Oh no.
So where was I originally going with that? So yeah, definitely be mindful of what you're putting it on, and what kind of money you're going to spend. Don't necessarily buy whatever the fuck unless it's truly the proverbial offer you can't refuse. But even then, you might be out 20, 30, 40 bucks. Even if you got a good deal on a whole gaggle of optics that might, that none of which might really have the proper eye relief or other factors for your gun. Obviously, Tom, I was anticipating you touching on height of the scope in tandem with eye relief as well. We kind of did a bit before. I briefly talked about how I use my risers.
Very true.
How I use my risers and such for that exact reason. So obviously, I've been in plenty of jams before where I just end up dropping the optic I brought to an op, right off for the day and falling back to irons because I realized, that does not really jive with the mounting situation, mount height rather. And I think that just about does it. So why don't we fire up the old screen share on my end? I'll kill yours for now. And
goodness, here we go.
Cruise over to Hop Up and talk about what are and aren't some more practical deals on that side of things on optics, right? So, pardon the stream purgatory. Here we are. This is just a search query simply of scope. Let's talk about what makes more sense to purchase than others. We have to start the search at the $15 red dot site.
God.
Let's see if it's if he also tacks on shipping and only uses large flat rate boxes. I'm sure he does. So we got our obviously mom's dinner table. 20th generation thrift store hand me down. We got a photograph. Got to use that as a photography space. It's really it's a competent photo. Oh, a small crack. Well, we'll get to Evike brand. They probably came with a small crack.
Oh, excellent.
That's not a big deal. We don't necessarily want to blame him. But competent photo work. I said this is just our for those a little newer to the show. We occasionally do this hop up exploration. The hop up expeditionary force towards the end of a lot of podcasts. If
the hef.
If
that's correct.
Join the hef.
For the entire show. We did one show that I believe was principally just this, looking at all kinds of things. We'll just kind of keep this going.
Real quick before you X that photo out, actually, just kind of an interesting point. So a lot of really bottom barrel garbage optics. Actually, go back one. Yeah, there you go. You can kind of see the reflection on the table there has a bit of a blue tint to it. That's not a good thing. So
yeah,
optics are coated and tinted for a number of reasons, like anti-glare, things like that. The fact that you can see that blue there means that they probably were just trying to create a facsimile of a real coating and just like essentially tinted the glass. So that's bad. Avoid that.
So right there, I
wouldn't help anything at all. It's going to be like
guaranteed the first time if you wax it, you'll end up with that crack.
If anybody's ever had a really cheap, shitty pair of sunglasses and then put on a pair of like, $50 even like sunglasses, and you're like, oh, this is a completely different story. That is the exact effect that you will have with optics coatings for scopes as well.
Yeah,
great. Obviously, I'm not even disparaging the seller as such. When we got to have our obligatory rusty hardware on one of the mounting bolts up front, you guys see that washer? Love it. We already talked about the crack. Is it necessarily? He probably just has it on, Tom. Insofar as this red glow.
No. So the front coating on a lot of optics is actually amber in a lot of cases. That is an anti-glare coating. So that would be pretty typical, even on a real one, to be able to see that.
Okay, so that's just how those look photographed. I don't have a lot of experience there. Plus $8 shipping. So he'll use a small flat rate box. That's reasonable.
Good for him. Just as a quick note, things to really avoid, like if you go back to the main page there, and even in the you may also like section you were just looking at, if you see just like a white background, like everything in the second row there, except for the last one,
what is the deal with these? Just like Craigslist, is this?
Just do not do that ever. That's a picture of a real Spectre Elcan that they're trying to
pawn it off as,
and that's just probably a complete piece of shit.
Naturally, you got to sign in to see seller profiles now. It's fucking stupendous. So okay, a la the guys, selling. You look up a make and model of a car on Craigslist, back to a car comparison, and you see next to nothing by way of actual listings, but 40 listings with similar photography of aftermarket rims. That's these guys, but of Airsoft. So, in your experience, Tom, because just on account of being too lazy to log in right here, right now, what would we normally find as far as going to those profiles? Any particular red flags? Would they be like a name of a major, of like a third-rate e-bike retail site? Because these are ads for, or is it just full-blown scams that have?
I think those are probably just full-blown. So there's a good and bad like AliExpress market for knockoff scopes, kind of as you discussed, like for the purposes of.
Let me actually kill the screen share for a moment so I can sign in. I really want to see the seller profile.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, for the purposes of like buying replicas, like if you're building a gun that has a particular optic on it and you're trying to replicate that real steel optic, but it's like $1,000 real steel optic. There are many Chinese sellers that actually, some of them sell fairly half decent optics. It's very difficult to tell whose are any good. I mean, it's like word of mouth for a lot of them. It's like, hey, I bought from the seller before, and their clone wasn't a complete piece of garbage. And even then, I've actually, that's bitten me before. In fact, funny enough, with an Elcan Spectre DR, bought a clone one that was a complete piece of shit. Bought one for cheaper than the one that I bought initially, and it was actually fantastic. So really tough to tell what you're getting. I would, if you know anybody that's kind of in on that stuff, or maybe like Reddit or some forums, it's tricky, but that is definitely something you can do. In terms of, I would imagine, in terms of like scams, a lot of those things that you're seeing on HopUp may literally just be those AliExpress sellers just like putting their stuff up on HopUp. Unfortunately, you're really going to get no actual idea of the performance of the scope until you get it in hand.
Yeah, true to your words, Tom. Sure enough, this guy's got 300 reviews. He's been here 8 years.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at what he's got there, I mean, he certainly doesn't own all that stuff to own it. So he's very clearly like buying the stuff and reselling it.
He could be one of those drop shippers too. That's a very popular
entirely possible.
Right,
actually.
however the fuck that works,
that would certainly make some sense.
He has what definitely look like a few normal listings. Anyway, so back to cruising back to optics. But yeah, obviously be mindful. Look at your seller feedback.
When you're buying clones, I mean, unfortunately, you do kind of have to be prepared to eat that. I mean, if it comes back and it's a piece of crap clone,
right?
Unfortunate, really. It's how it is sometimes, though. If you're looking for a scope, if you're flexible in terms of what the scope actually looks like, I would just really, really strongly recommend saving up your money and buying a real steel, again, like a Romeo 5 or something like that. You're going to get way better performance out of that.
Right.
Obviously not the same visual, but you'll get way better performance out of that.
No, it makes sense. What else do we want to look at here? Oh, okay. So this looks extraordinarily like the $15 one we looked at.
Yeah, those.
50.
If you see
a
that
Lancer
scope,
tactical,
turn the other way every time. All the ones that look like that. Those are scopes that belong on like a kid's telescope or maybe a BB gun. They're garbage. They're absolute crap. The emitters are terrible. They have the worst parallax you can imagine. They're like basically nerf for all intents and purposes. They do
better on a squirt gun.
Yeah, quite terrible.
Okay. Here's with basically a 4x32. Oh, originally $25.
Wow,
he
that's
came all the way down.
Savings.
Came all the way down to 20. No reviews. Okay. Not specified. Oh, I believe when you see a listing like this, no shipping specified at all. This is implied to be local pickup only. So tremendous job posting this, and or not being willing to stop at the post office on the way to any of your given errands over the course of a week, and otherwise just be too fucking lazy to put something in the mail and expect someone to come to Dongtown, Idaho to pick it up because you don't want to eat the $8 or charge those $8. Oh, what else do we say? Anything? I would have liked this SSG 10 floated up to the top earlier. Okay.
Oh, perfectly good.
Perfectly good condition, like new. Yeah,
I'm not gonna dog on like a Novrich too hard, but like you see an awful lot of guns that people just like buy initially thinking like, yes, I will become a sniper. I will buy this SSG 10. It's one of the most commonly sold guns on HopUp because people buy it, use it once, realize that it's not a terrible gun, but it's not a particularly good gun, and that they would have to put a lot of fucking work into it to make it a half decent gun, and then realize they don't really care about sniping anymore and just sell the gun. So
I think that one of the
so they
things
don't
that needs
realize
to be
they're
brought
stock.
up about that kind of stuff too, though, is like you're kind of hitting the nail on the head there. But you know, when people, you know, name brand people in the industry, and Novich is a good example. Like his gun that he actually uses has been tuned and retuned and retuned and retuned and retuned to the point where it shoots very consistently. The amount of time that you actually have to invest to get an airsoft replica to actually do that is literally a whole entire season of just tuning one gun.
Possibly more. You're
I mean,
absolutely right.
yeah, I mean, you guys, Tommy, I'm sure you remember when I had that Nav.
Oh yeah, I mean, shit, man, that was like 5 years of dialing that thing in to the point that it was.
To be clear, you're referring to a Dragunov, not a
Yeah,
Novich.
yeah. At one point in time, I had a TM knockoff with a full wood kit, and it was decent when I got it. It shot really hot, but it didn't really do much else besides shoot ridiculously hot. It was totally inaccurate. So I decided that I was going to become my mission to make this thing work really well. And I rebuilt the mech box probably 24 times, 3 times. I had 4 or 5 different barrels that were in and out of there. I had an Orga in there for a bit. I had a couple of Type Wars. I had a Prometheus. When I finally got rid of it and gave up, it had a Prometheus in it, and it was the PSG 1 Plus length Prometheus barrel. And I was hitting, you know, well over 250 feet accurately down to about a hand size. But the amount of time, energy, and money that I put into that damn thing, yeah, it was a lot. It was a whole bunch,
but worth it.
So yeah. You know, but again, you know, depending on what you're going to do and like how much you want to get into it. But I mean, total cost on that, not including time and energy and the amount of BBs I ran through it to make sure it shot well. I mean, we're talking thousands of dollars.
I mean, shit, we could have a whole episode on sniping, to be honest, or building a sniper rifle, maybe more specifically.
Yeah, maybe that would be something we should do.
Art
of you could film in your basement or something, Tom.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, just back to what's on scopes here, or on screen rather.
Yeah.
Pun intended again. I get another ad like Tom was talking about earlier. I mean, ostensibly some rando with immaculate reviews, and I don't know if she's going to drop. I don't care on that end of things. I've just never really seen. Maybe I have a few times, but what is the deal with these short little rails and where they are? Is that just if you want to put a laser on top of the side?
I mean, if you're a crackhead, you could put like a laser or a flashlight on there.
Scopes.
So you joke, but I mean, I guess not on that one. Like, I mean, yeah, joking or not, actually, not on that scope. Some tell, but like, yeah, the turrets are way too big on that scope to have an actual like backup red dot. But genuinely, they're
I've seen that on the Escape from Tarkov Impressionists, knowing or otherwise, where you have like one straight rail, 3-4 inches. So a scope like this would have no top knob. Like that, so you could put it back up,
or it would just have a very low profile turret. Yeah, absolutely correct.
So you would actually clear. But yeah, this is just like a bunch of little rails. What the fuck?
Yeah, man, I don't know.
Obviously, it probably wasn't designed by someone who's ever actually, done time on a field. Okay, so here's the first red dot we've seen in a while. It's definitely a price point up or so. What's the deal with AIM Sports as a brand? Are they halfway decent?
It's nothing to do with AIM Sports even. I don't care whose name is on it. That is the exact same scope that we were just looking at, but with a different brand name.
We into it. We really should have a betting pool on this or something. We've hit our first listing tonight of the proverbial seller who can't be bothered to find an old rag, shirt, whatever, plastic whistle brush and clean it up a little. It's just straight from what was this, sitting in a barn for the past year or two? That's not even normal levels of basement dust.
The garbage is where it belongs. That just straight into the trash.
Okay, naturally he's trying to get probably north of e-bike prices.
I'm sorry, does that say Full Metal Machine Precision Construction?
Yeah,
what does like?
What
the fuck does that mean?
I want the sloppy machine one.
Same here, or like not even like animal,
or partially metal.
What is it?
I don't need a metal. I don't need a metal lens. Can I opt out of that?
I want one made of bone.
Yeah, I would prefer one that was full
machine.
bone. It's sloppy construction.
It's not a big deal if it's dirty though. If that one's dirty, it's what we
fine,
want, and we can clean it ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
For
right,
$45.
straight in the trash. Absolutely for sure.
What's this? Shadow Op Type 96. We're flipping it back into looking at guns once in a while.
I'm so glad. The hop up
Used shoots great. Selling to switch to a DMR. Okay,
hop up makes me not want to play Airsoft ever.
The spring upgrade kit. I'm sure he did that properly.
Jesus Christ.
We'll ship with the original spring as well for when you have to fix it yourself. 400 plus FPS with 0.12s. Everything else is stock. Okay.
Yep. Please don't be this person. If you're gonna snipe for Airsoft or do something like that, just I have some vain hope that we've moved on from this. I feel like I don't see these people as much anymore, but God.
You talking like the typical user of a gun like that?
Just like the Call of Duty sniper.
Buys it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was their first gun. I want a sniper rifle. I feel like people have thankfully moved away from that a little bit, but God above.
Maybe it was our podcast about it. Maybe the 5 people who watched really started spreading the good word.
We can dream.
Yeah. A lot of gems here. Back to NC Star. Do NC Star make anything worth $100? I would.
They sell them for that much. I mean, they're not. They're bad. They're not good scopes. I mean, they're
only been used 2 times.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
And he probably wants a price that for one that you can.
NC Star does make cheap.
You can probably get one that's been used no times for $100, right?
Yeah, probably. They're not unforgivable garbage, but they're not very good. Oh, it's a run
cam.
They're
close.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That is not a scope.
Cam. Okay.
So that's yeah. Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. Is if you're elite MLG sniper and you want to make sure you get kill cam footage, how you actually make that work with your optic? It's a whole thing.
No ring mounts, $10 shipping.
Yeah, that's actually a real good point. Make sure you're not getting the wrong size, because boy, I've seen that a number of times. Get the right size scope rings and get ones that aren't complete dog shit for sure. Because the ones that suck will not only they won't hold a 0 correctly, so your scope will be all over the place after some rounds of shooting and playing. B, they can actually damage and or just straight up break your scope. So don't do that. Buy rings that are either use the rings that came with the optic, or just buy ones that come with them. Don't suck. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this is a potentially somewhat, rare example of something that it's not exceptionally cost prohibitive to buy something ready to drop on a gun.
No, absolutely not.
In terms of the mounting situation or mounting hardware. I mean, I'm sure if you're the gourmet, very specific options or something really, you get a really good deal on used at the higher ends. You might have to look into mount rings or a very specific build where you need a particular clearance or want it offset.
Yeah, I mean, for most airsofters, buying most scopes, your rings are going to be
ready to rip.
Even nice red dots, like the Romeos and stuff like that. You can't just go buy any rings for those. They use a specific Romeo 5 mount. So, or maybe a specific Sig Sauer mount, but yeah.
What are your thoughts on these?
Now I actually am a big fan of kill flashes, particularly ones like that. So that's a really cool, especially if you're doing an impression, really neat way to get lens protection without necessarily needing to have a piece of shiny polycarb taped in there. Kill flashes will only obviously go on certain scopes. They need to be the right size. Only some scopes really use kill flashes a lot, like aim points, things like that. But they're in real life, they're meant to make it so that your muzzle flash does not blind you while you're using the scope. In Airsoft, they can be made of things like aluminum, or even I've seen 3D printed ones that make a cool sacrificial lens that does not inhibit your ability to see through the scope at all, which is quite nice.
Yeah, it was pretty neat.
Basically, just a little honeycomb of a particular material.
Right.
They act like a little sun shield almost. Pretty cool.
Well, it also gives you a little bit of limited protection from your lens being broken too. So.
Oh, 100%. No, quite effective actually. Yeah. I mean, they might be sort of sacrificial, especially the 3D printed ones will split, but they will definitely protect your lens from BB impacts. The real ones are made of metal, so I mean those will absolutely shred.
Those will hold, right? Yeah, if you got the compatible optics and the money for that.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad that actually came up because we have discussed an alternative option to the, albeit quite accessible, polycarb protection. And Average Scope. He rebrands his scopes as well.
Really?
It's really great condition externally in clear glass. Okay, well, it was either never got it dirty or it's fairly clean.
Oh my God, it's branded by him. Oh God.
I mean,
those all suck. Just for what it's worth.
Don't misunderstand. We're not saying that you shouldn't buy things from people like Airsoft celebrities.
No, and I'm not dogging on him either.
It's just that particular scope is it's a generic scope with just a name on it, right?
Right. Now make sure you
know
what
you're buying yet again at probably retail-ish price and
plus more than retail,
flat rate shipping.
Also, illuminated scopes like that where the reticle lights up, those are.
They fail
pretty terrible. Yeah, and there's like glare. Like you turn the light on and you just can't really see much else around the target. It's just a bad idea, all things considered.
Yeah, I had a short M14 that I rocked for a long time. It was that TM.
Oh hell yeah, dude.
And I had spent a lot of time on that gun. I mean, a lot of time getting it tuned up real well. It outshot a PTW with a 150 cylinder in it consistently.
God bless.
Which was a humbling experience for the owner of the PTW.
No doubt.
But I had a scope very similar to that. I had a 3-color scope on it for a while. And I found that when I was actually using it and trying to do any of my really good shots or whatever, the glare coming back, if I had the illumination turned up too much, made it so you really couldn't see like smaller objects at distance. Yeah. Really like that camo suit you got there. That's snazzy.
Yeah, well, this is for if you gotta blend in an engagement at the artificial section of the local florist.
I was thinking more like a rose garden, like you're fighting in a rose.
I don't know why the other photos are slowly and steadily loading. I don't know if they were taken with like something besides a disposable camera. I thought you had to use a disposable camera to take listing photos for hop up, but
no, actually, you can use more on iPhones as well.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
if you're in a pinch,
or like the old school like non DSLR digital cameras.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Still get something like that.
The ancient ones.
100%.
That is
okay.
Okay.
Was that a green slug in the middle?
Sorry, from the top.
Was that a green slug in the middle there?
God, I hope so. It's just hanging.
Like right
it's a really shiny leaf,
Shiny leaf, yeah. You see those in nature all the time.
Right. Varnished leaves, yeah.
Yeah.
Free hunting camo hat. Got it.
Oh, very good.
Yep.
Oh, and camo mechanics gloves.
Yeah, we got
naturally
leaves
the big yellow
on the mechanics
tags
gloves.
Are on. Yeah.
Do you think perhaps those were hot glued in place?
Oh, right.
Oh, I like the hole for the scope.
I was just gonna say that's impressive.
Nothing says solid eye pro like a hole in it.
Pretty remarkable. Or just even like what he did there, like putting the lens, like the camo on it, and then just he clearly didn't like that he was thinking that was somehow going to impact his ability to see through the scope, so he cut that hole out there. That's impressive. Bless his heart.
It works. We're not making fun of anybody here.
And then, legally required sniper, gotta have the run cam. You gotta have the run cam and the silence Mark 23.
It's very important. Okay, is this a Mark 23 upper? I mean, why not? Whatever you're selling, why not throw in the listing here?
I mean, I think we can tell exactly what kind of guy this guy. Yeah, look at that. I mean, we know exactly what we're getting into here.
Okay,
good for him. He saw enough Silo and Navarch videos involving Mark 23s and science skills that,
Or what was a Kicking Mustang? Used to use those too.
Oh yeah, that guy. Right.
All right. Before we close it up tonight, I could pull up the episode and figure out. I really want to see if that M4 we looked at a while ago, it was all metallic red with a skull magwell.
Badass.
I think it was pretty baller.
Very cool. Bad to the bone, if one will.
I think the kids are now calling it lit. Is that the terminology?
Sure. From what I've understood,
I'll take your word for it.
Type in red gun.
Skull M4, fantastic. I mean, with that first listing there was a Skull M4. I mean, it did literally say that in the listing.
Okay, for some reason, like the first 3 rows are just all shit we've been looking at, and I don't. Why is this not refreshing?
Photos loading extremely effectively. It's very cool.
Well, they got a lot of bandwidth there.
Oh yeah, I mean,
yeah, something's going on.
So many
obviously the call is fine
at the same time here.
Yeah, well, maybe they're so adamant about.
How much is that guy selling that mic? Is that a micro gun that he's selling for? Why in God's green earth is he selling a micro gun for $900? Can you click on that listing? Right in the middle. Scroll up. I gotta know. I gotta know.
Fuck yes.
Yeah, what's going on? Why is that $900?
Well, it's a classic Army. It's the full metal one. It is.
No. I have the micro gun.
Back in like '83, well, actually no, it was probably like 2006, 2007. They were probably like 1,200.
No, you're thinking of a different gun entirely, man. This is the new one, the tiny one.
Yeah,
no, it's like green gas and HPA. It's dinky.
Green gas and
like
HPA,
$500. I have. By the way, Mike, I don't know if you know this. I have a full size one now too.
Does not come with tank and reg.
Yeah, what
okay,
this man, that is literally just a scam. That is completely insane. You can buy that new in box from Evike for half that.
And this is again another just like fourth
absolutely remarkable.
I mean, I don't know. We're having some technical difficulties here. I don't know if you guys can see just the names and prices of anything else.
That's
whether the prices are inflated.
Maple
Leaf Glock hop-up chamber, $60. I mean, maybe the price of just
let's see what a new in box. $5.99 for a classic Army M132. on
the same gun.
New in a box. Very cool. I love that for him.
He's shockingly not really price gouging for a 5K of 2.5s. Oh, I'm sure full cost of shipping. I'm sure. Oh, $20 shipping. Okay, so we can go to for context to the listeners, we are about Bad Cat Airsoft, aforementioned. We're about 2 hours west, so we could literally have it barely not be worth our time gas wise to drive to them and buy I think they sell 4Kers of 2.8s for 27, ship tax or not shipped, with tax with everything, and still save money. Versus,
I'm gonna go right out on a limb here and say that you probably shouldn't buy from a company named SS Airsoft, but that's me. Just saying.
It depends on what the SS. Never mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there 2 lightning bolts in there? Never mind.
No, I mean it is. It's like it's I don't know, whatever that stupid ass font is, but
stencil.
Sure. It's not. It's like stupider than stencil because it's not even like the cool stencil.
Same day shipping afforded 2 p.m. Wednesday to Friday.
Just get out of here. Yeah, whatever.
$70 high cap of mags.
Sure, why not? Why the hell not?
If you saw the state of residence, you know that these fucking things sell. Oh man.
Yeah, just throw the entire store in the trash.
All right. Yeah, I think we'll end it here. I've had all I can take.
I need the abusive stuff.
But yeah, so I think that about wraps things up nicely tonight. We're at an hour 7. I think we talked about what we need to talk about here. We're not planning the longest broadcast necessarily from the get-go. Yeah, so I think we'll end it here if it pleases the court.
I got nothing.
Sound good, guys? Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thanks, guys. It was good to
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep, we will definitely see you guys for the next one. Probably shouldn't be too soon here. I forgot what that stupid closer I always said was. Or didn't I have all different things? Wasn't it? Anyway.
I had to write it down.
Wait. We'll see you guys for the next one, or we won't. In which case,